$1,000. That is the production cost of Ukraine's Sting Interceptor drone. $4 million. That is the cost of a single American Patriot missile. 500 grams. That is the warhead payload of the Sting. Roughly the weight of a can of soup. 0. That is the number of Patriot missiles needed once the Sting is in the air. In the first 3 days of Operation Epic Fury, the United States fired 800 Patriot missiles against Iranian Shahed drones at a cost of $3.2 billion. Ukraine has now sent the Sting to American bases in the Middle East. The cost equation of the entire conflict has just been rewritten by a drone that weighs less than a laptop and costs less than a used motorcycle. To understand what the Sting represents in engineering terms, you first need to understand the problem it was built to solve. The Shahed drone, the platform Iran has been supplying to Russia since shortly after Putin's 2022 invasion, as Le Monde reported, and which Iran subsequently licensed to Russia for domestic production, operates on a simple principle. It is cheap enough to be launched in swarms, it is accurate enough to cause damage, and it is numerous enough to overwhelm point defense systems that rely on expensive interceptor missiles. Each Shahed costs Iran between $20,000 and $50,000 to produce. Each Patriot missile costs the United States approximately $4 million. In a swarm of 5 Shaheds, Iran spends at most $250,000. The United States spends $20 million to stop them. The asymmetry is intentional and structural. Iran does not need its drones to get through. It just needs to force the United States to keep firing. Ukraine has been living inside this problem for 4 years. Since Iran began supplying Shaheds to Russia in 2022, and the subsequent licensing agreement allowed Russia to produce its own variants domestically, Ukraine has faced this exact platform over its own territory, in swarms that have sometimes numbered in the hundreds on a single night. Its response was not to match the Shahed with expensive interceptors. It was to build something cheaper. The Sting emerged from that requirement. Described by the new voice of Ukraine as an FPV interceptor, the Sting flies at up to 315 kilometers per hour, fast enough to intercept a Shahed mid-flight and adjust trajectory as needed, since Shaheds fly pre-programmed routes to fixed targets. Its range is 37 kilometers. Its maximum altitude is 7 kilometers. Its warhead payload is 500 grams. An operator tracks targets through VR goggles in real time. An AI-based guidance system maintains lock on the incoming Shahed. A remote detonation mechanism allows precise warhead release. The result is a platform that achieves an 80 to 90% hit rate against Shaheds, according to the new voice of Ukraine, and costs $1,000 to build. By February 24th, United 24 Media reported that Ukrainian interceptor drones accounted for 30% of all Ukrainian air defense kills. That figure is the product of a deployment that began in earnest only at the end of 2025. In 2025 alone, Ukraine built 100,000 interceptor drones. Since then, production capacity has grown 8-fold. Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council confirmed annual production capacity of 800,000 interceptor units at current funding levels. On March 18th, Business Insider reported that Ukraine has offered to supply the United States and its Middle Eastern partners with up to 1,000 interceptor drones per day. The supply constraint is not manufacturing, it is funding. If the United States and its allies pay for the drones, Ukraine can produce them in the quantities needed to effectively end Iran's Shahed strategy as an economically viable tactic. Quick note, you're watching Defense Wire. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. The engineering decision that makes the Sting viable is the same one that makes the entire interceptor concept counterintuitive to traditional defense procurement thinking. Western air defense doctrine has historically responded to threats with systems that are more capable, more expensive, and more sophisticated than what they intercept. The Patriot is a ballistic missile defense system. Its specifications are designed to defeat sophisticated ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and high-performance aircraft. Using it against a $20,000 Shahed is the equivalent of using a surgical laser to swat a fly. It works, but the economics are catastrophic at scale. The Sting inverts this logic entirely. It matches the Shahed's cost tier rather than exceeding it. It uses AI guidance and VR operator control to compensate for the simplicity of its airframe and warhead. It leverages kinetic energy and the Shahed's own explosive payload to achieve destruction without requiring a large warhead of its own. The 500-gram payload is not a limitation. It is a deliberate engineering choice that enables the price point. The transformation in the cost equation when Sting replaces Patriots is total. A 5-drone Shahed swarm intercepted by Patriots costs the United States $20 million. Intercepted by Stings, the same swarm costs $5,000 to $10,000. Iran now spends more launching the swarm than the United States spends stopping it. The asymmetry has been reversed. Every additional Shahed Iran launches accelerates its own resource depletion relative to its adversary. This is not a marginal improvement in cost efficiency. It is a structural inversion of the entire economic logic that underpins Iran's drone strategy. The operational precedent that makes the Sting most compelling is its proven track record. Now, this is not a prototype. It is not a system being tested under controlled conditions. It has been fighting in active combat, in large numbers, against exactly the platform it is now being deployed against in the Middle East, and achieving an 80 to 90% hit rate. The 4 years of development, iteration, and battlefield refinement that produced the Sting are the same 4 years that gave Ukraine's drone operators the expertise they are now transferring to U.S. and Gulf state military personnel in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. The 201 Ukrainian experts deployed to the Gulf by March 17th are not there to explain a manual. They are there to transfer 4 years of hard-won operational knowledge about how Shaheds fly, how they navigate, how their swarm tactics are coordinated, and where in the engagement sequence they are most vulnerable. The one area where the Sting faces genuine challenges is electronic warfare. Like all software-dependent platforms, its guidance systems require regular updates to counter evolving EW environments. In the Ukraine context, this has meant approximately monthly software updates to stay ahead of Russian countermeasures. In the Gulf context, the EW threat is different, but comparable. Iranian electronic warfare capabilities are advanced, and any interceptor program will require ongoing technical investment to maintain effectiveness. The Ukrainian experts deploying to the Gulf bring direct experience managing this update cycle under combat conditions, which is a capability that cannot be transferred by a technical document alone. But Ukraine's story is not exceptional. It is the rule of what happens when a defense industry is forced to solve a real problem with real constraints and real consequences for failure. The Sting exists because Ukraine needed something cheaper, faster, and more scalable than anything available to it from Western suppliers. What it built in that process has now become the most cost-effective Shahed interceptor in the world, and it is being deployed at the exact moment the United States most needs it. The question that every defense procurement office in the world is now asking is not whether cheap interceptors can beat expensive attack drones. The Sting has already answered that. The question is how quickly every air defense system in the world can integrate this principle before the next Shahed swarm reaches its target. If you want to understand the broader drone architecture that produced the Sting, check out our breakdown of Ukraine's 3-layer aerial defense and strike system. And if you want to see how the economics of this deployment are reshaping Ukraine's defense industry strategy, our analysis of the Interceptor export program will show you the full picture. Subscribe to Defense Wire so you never miss what comes next.